chapter 4 years ago. And then 2 years ago, the pandemic started. And that's really been the big challenge for us in my time. Recruiting has not been an issue. I came to the
4 years
chapter
ago.
I came to the chapter in 2009 and entered formation. And at that point, I think we had maybe 12 people. Since then, we've increased to about 30 people. And we really haven't gone out of our way to recruit. It's a Dominican moment in the United States right now. The gospel needs to be preached. And thanks to the internet, more and more people are aware of Dominicans and of the Dominican order, and they know about the Dominican laity, and they come find us. That's how I got there. I'll tell you a bit of my story. This is a long story, and I'll try to make it as short as I can. I was raised Catholic. This is not a Catholic country. It's mostly a Christian country, but I was raised Catholic. And I got married a girl from a different Christian denomination. And I felt strongly at the time, and I still do, that for the sake of raising the children in the faith, you need mother and father to work together. And it was very clear at that point that my wife was not open to becoming Catholic. And so I joined her church. 10 to 15 years later, that seemed like a bad move to me. The church that I joined was getting stranger and stranger. My wife agreed, and we started looking for where we would go. And I started reading. I started studying. Imagine studying. One of the books I read was a book on Thomas Aquinas by G.K. Chesterton. First philosopher I'd run into since my philosophy class in college that made any sense at all. My philosophy class had skipped over Aristotle and Thomas completely. I thought, well, that's interesting. I was already leaning towards returning to the Catholic faith at that time. Then I discovered that a friend of mine, a person I'd worked with, was a lay Dominican. And I thought, you can be a lay Dominican? I knew about third order Benedictines. You can be a lay Dominican? I could be a lay Dominican like Thomas? How cool is that? I wasn't even Catholic, and I was already wanting to be a Dominican. Came back to the church in 2007. My wife was confirmed Catholic the following spring. And in 2008, a year later, after I returned, I went and visited our local chapter, wanted to join, was told, oh my goodness, you need to have been a practicing Catholic for 2 years in order to enter formation. Obedience is one of the things we're about, right? So I went away, I came back a year later, entered formation, and now I'm the prior of the chapter, which is not something I was looking for. But, obedience is what we're about, and it's what I was asked to do. So, but yes, I fell in love with Thomas Aquinas more as a person, as a saint, than as a philosopher before I was even Catholic again. And he led me to the order. He led me into the order. He is my patron in the order, and here I am. Many of our people have similar stories. It's not that we went out looking for people to come join our chapter. They were drawn there. God drew them there. Their hearts drew them there. Grace perfects nature, right? And we are lay Dominicans because that's what we need to become who God wants us to be. That's the route God's given us to holiness. So they come and we receive them. In terms of challenges being prior, as I say, the big one is dealing with the pandemic, with having to go from meeting in person. We usually, as a chapter, meet in person once a month. We come from all over the Los Angeles area, and we have our meeting. We will say morning prayer. We have a formation time. We usually have a bit of time for breakfast. We have what we call a potluck here. Everybody brings food, and we eat together after morning prayer.
So you carry on food.
Well, prayer, community, formation. We have a formation time, and the preaching. Then we have to go out and do. But we cover the other three pillars for meetings. But with the pandemic, we were not allowed to meet in person here in LA. We were under lockdown for quite a long while. We couldn't even go to Mass in person for a very long while. And so we had to start meeting on Zoom the way we're meeting here. And that was tricky. Especially when it came time for our chapter elections. We managed to get everybody together long enough to do our chapter elections this last spring, and in person, so we could do them, because trying to do them with 30 members over Zoom would have been difficult. Other than that, we haven't had too many problems. Sometimes we have people come to us looking to join who really are clearly not called to the order, and that's always tricky. We had one poor woman who we determined, after being puzzled by her, confused by her for some time, we discovered that she was in fact mentally ill. And we wished her the best, but we couldn't receive her into the order. There was one occasion this was the most serious one, and it was before I was actually on the chapter council. We had a member who was accused of wrongdoing, and we had to eject him from the chapter. I still don't know what all was involved. The chapter council and our religious assistant, who was the pastor at the Dominican parish where we meet, were cognizant of all the details, and they explained to the chapter, what is going on is not good for the chapter. This is what you need to do for the good of the chapter. And we said, okay, we have to trust you people. So that's what we did. That was very, very hard. The person involved was one of the people who welcomed me into the chapter when I first arrived. And if it weren't for him, I might not be talking to you here today. In fact, I will ask you to say a prayer for him. He had a stroke or something like it recently. He is in very poor health at the moment. So if you could all pray for his health, I would appreciate that, because he's a good man. I think he was in the wrong position and things went bad.
What's his name?
His name is Roger.
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 Do you aware of her full name? Just Roger? Do you know his last name?
I do know his last name, and I cannot bring it to mind at the moment.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
All right.
Hold on a second.
Given the name is Roger. Oops.
His last name is Vignocchi. It's an Italian name.
Okay, Vignocchi.
Roger Vignocchi.
Okay.
So
we copy that.
Yeah. And that was very difficult for the council at the time, I know. Other than that, things go fairly smoothly for us most of the time. Just got to remember that Jesus is in charge.
Yeah. So, what was the reason people want to join the Dominikan 18 Los Angeles? I'm sure that you find any excuses or any reason of coming from them. You know, do you remember what excuses, what reasons they want to join Dominikan 18? Is this because of the Thomas Aquinas, or because of the being lonely, or what?
Sometimes it's Thomas Aquinas. We have at least one person who had at one time been in seminary for the priesthood and was for one reason or another not able to continue. But he could do this. He could be a lay Dominican. Often it's because they're attracted to Dominic, to the idea of study and of preaching. And preaching takes all different forms for the people in our chapter. It's different for every person. We have an expression in English. If you've seen one dog, let's say you've seen them all. They're all alike. And sometimes we'll say something like, if you've seen one Dominican, you've only seen one Dominican. They're all different. That's certainly true for us. Our chapter, we have many people who spend a lot of time in prayer. The way they serve is by praying, which these days we are all Dominicans together. All lay Dominicans are just members of the order now. There was a time when we were the Order of Penitents, and one of our chief jobs was to do penance and prayer for the friars and the sisters. Okay. Some of our older members, that's still what they do. That's still what they do. More of our younger members are coming because they want to preach in some way. But again, it's different for each person. And of course, it depends on where they are in their life. And when you're in formation, when you're just learning, of course, you're spending all your time studying. Me, I spend my time leading the chapter and teaching RCIA, and I don't have enough time to study. And I mentioned that to a Dominican friar a while back, and he said, yes, that's the season you're in. That's the way it works. I am hoping that in a couple of years, when my term as prior is up that they will not elect me to do something else and I'll be able to have more time to study again. It would be nice to go back to that.
Most of the members like to pray mostly. Is it due to the difficulties of meeting together in form of community due to the pandemic, or the community life doesn't work well due to the distances from one member to another member?
I think I must have expressed myself badly. Our members are very good about participating in our community life. But our community life, because we are spread apart, is mostly the one meeting once a month. I was speaking about how they preach. And for many of them, the way they preach is through service to others, and the service to others is prayer. I wouldn't say that's most, but it's many, especially a number of our older members. But we have members who do all sorts of things. As I say, I teach adults who want to come into the faith, what the Catholic faith is all about. We have people who teach catechism. We have an organization here in the United States called St. Paul Street Evangelization, which is, it's not a ministry of the Dominican order, but it's a very Dominican kind of ministry where people will go to a public place with a table and signs, and they'll sit. And anyone who wants to come and talk to them about Christianity, they will talk to and talk about Jesus, talk about what the faith is all about. People here in the United States, if you just walk up to them and say, "Do you know Jesus? Would you like to talk about Jesus?" They will tend to look at you and hurry away. But if you are much calmer about it and you let them approach, it works much better. We were starting to look at working with the St. Paul Street Evangelization people in our area and train our members to go out and do that kind of preaching. And then the pandemic hit, and nobody was stopping to talk to anybody they didn't know out in public. So we were waiting on that, but it's one of the things we would like to do. It's really the only thing I know of that could work in Los Angeles that would be similar to St. Dominic's first preachers going into the square on a ladder and preaching the gospel. And would reach people who don't know Jesus at all. And I'd like to see us do that. So yeah, and I don't know everything that everybody does either. But I know we've got people out doing a lot of different things. Yeah. But some of our older members, they're mostly at home, they're taking care of grandkids, and they're praying.
I see. Cool. Great. Pateo or any others, do you have any questions to Will or to Florencia? Or Willem?
Maybe Danang can say something about the growing of Dominican in Indonesia. So Mr. Will can know about the Dominican in Indonesia. Yeah.
Sorry, Will. I just throw questions to the Indonesians, Dominicans, whether they have questions to you or Florencia.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm happy to answer.
Okay.
There is the chat area. If people want to type questions in the chat, I could look for them there too. Happy to answer.
Pak Frans, Bu Gwenny, kalau ada pertanyaan.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Okay. Sylvia, please. Mhm.
My name is Sylvia. I was in San Francisco for a long the Dominican lay, and but what I noticed was when I went to the church, there were not a lot of younger people. Mostly they were elderly. I mean, like older. So my question is, how about the youth community, Dominican youth community over there right now? Thank you.
I do not
How-
have any knowledge of Dominican youth as such in the United States. I do know that in San Francisco, the population is there are just not many children in San Francisco. I would not have expected to see young people at the church in San Francisco, very many. Cities like San Francisco tend to be older and young single people, young working people who are not interested in getting married, and like that. I can tell you that at our parish, we are in a suburban area in the north part of Los Angeles. We have a very active youth ministry. I have 4 kids. Both my daughters are involved in the leadership in the youth ministry here. I believe they have an active youth ministry at St. Dominic's Parish, which is where our chapter meets. That's about a 20-minute drive from where I live. So youth ministry is going on. We do have young families in many of our churches, but you're not going to tend to see that in the big, what used to be the great big urban churches like the one in downtown San Francisco. And, you know, if you go to your average daily mass, you're going to find mostly older people because they're the ones who are not at school. They're the ones who are not at work and have the time to get there. It's sad, but that's what it is.
Any other questions?
Will
So
just
Sylvia,
want to
is it?
say that
Will
you
answer?
went away. Sorry, you went
Go
away
ahead,
from
please.
Catholic Church and then joined Episcopalian Church for 17 years.
20.
But then again, you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned about you met so many strangers there. Is it because of that situation that you came back to Catholic Church, or was it because you read Thomas Aquinas?
There were many aspects to it. The first part of it was, as I say, I married a girl from the Episcopal Church, and she went to a small parish, a small, very close parish. Everybody knew each other. My background, I went to a much larger Catholic church. My father always made sure we got to church, always went to church. It was important to him, but he would never talk about his faith. I believe his faith was important to him, but he didn't talk about it. He married a woman from the Methodist Church who was very active in her church, but because she had agreed that all of their children would be raised Catholic, she didn't talk about her faith all that much with us. And what I noticed was that and I've got a sister and 2 brothers, only 2 of us of the 4 remained Christians at all. And I put that down to the fact that my parents were not working together in this. I love my parents dearly. They were very good to me. Very good parents, but they did not pass their faith on adequately to their kids. I wanted to do better. And I knew that meant that my wife and I needed to be pulling together like two horses pulling a wagon. You know, if you got two horses pulling a wagon and one goes that way and one goes that way, it's not going to work out well. They got to walk side by side. And at that time, I didn't know much theology. My faith was very important to me. I didn't leave because I had a problem with Catholicism. But at that time, the Episcopal Church was the church most similar on the surface to the Catholic Church. Their services were almost identical in appearance to a Mass. And my wife was not going to leave that. She said, I know everybody here and you don't know anybody at your parish to speak of. Why would I want to leave this community that I belong to? And I said, okay, I see what's happening. And so I went and I joined her church. And as I got involved, as I got to know the Episcopal Church, I realized that a great many of the bishops in the Episcopal Church did not believe the faith, did not teach the faith. The church, the Episcopal Church, was drifting farther and farther and farther from what the Bible teaches. And although I had been told when I joined that Episcopalians believed pretty much what Catholics do, I found out that that was a lie. It wasn't true. And so we were looking to go to a place that we were starting to have children. We wanted to go somewhere where we could raise our children in the faith. The Episcopal Church clearly wasn't it. And so I started reading. I found a wonderful book on the early fathers of the church that showed the sacred tradition being handed down from St. John to Polycarp to Ignatius of Antioch, through Justin Martyr, through the early fathers of the church on down the centuries. And in particular, I read part of Justin Martyr's Apology, where he describes the Mass to one of the Roman emperors. And he describes all the parts of the Mass. And I'm sitting there thinking back to my childhood, to my youth as a Catholic, and thinking, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did that. Yeah, it was all there. He was describing the Mass I'd grown up with. The Mass I'd grown up with really was the reflection of the faith we received from the saints. And I said, we're going to have to be Catholic, aren't we? And then I'm afraid I said a very rude word because I didn't think my wife was going to go for it. Kept studying, kept praying. And as I say, after a number of years, she agreed. She was confirmed Catholic. I have 4 kids. All of them, 2 of them, well, 3 of them are adults. 2 are out working now. They're out of college. 1 is in college, going to a Catholic college here in the United States. 1 is in high school. They are all still involved in the church. They all still go to church on Sunday, which is not always the case for their peers in school or in church. So the way I see it, God led me on a roundabout path to where he wanted me to be. Everything led up to here. Sylvia asks in the chat, Will, is the chapter you are in affiliated with a parish? If so, is the parish managed by Dominican priests? Is the chapter you are in accompanied by a Dominican priest or Dominican sister? The answer to all of those is yes. My own parish is called Holy Redeemer, but our chapter meets at St. Dominic's here in Los Angeles in an area called Eagle Rock. It is a Dominican parish. It was founded 100 years ago as a Dominican parish. We have beautiful stained glass. I love to go there because I sit there and there's the altar, and then there are beautiful stained glass of Jesus saying that he will be with us all days, and St. Dominic on this side and St. Thomas Aquinas on that side. St. Dominic has his spotted dog with the torch. It's gorgeous. I love it every time I see it. The chapter, it's a Dominican parish. It's managed by Dominican priests from our Western province. We are accompanied by one of them, a retired priest. His name is Father Donald Bramble. He is a retired Dominican. He is now in residence there at St. Dominic's. They usually have a number of older Dominican priests there, in addition to the ones who are based there.
Okay, Will?
Yes.
I'd like to give comment on what you shared just now. One
Please.
thing, I highly appreciate it, and it is a kind of struggle for from your side. Then I'd like to share about the attitude. From what you shared just now, I knew that you have critical mind. You're quite critical on your faith also. The problem is different with what we face in Indonesia. As you know, mostly we are not that critical about our faith. We tend to listen. We tend to listen, and then we learn slowly, and then we try to, what should I say, the term, grow the faith. So for us, Dominican laity in Indonesia, our responsibility is quite big concerning inviting new members to join in Dominican laity. One thing, I believe it is our duty to invite and to save as many people as we can. But then in doing that, I personally, I don't think I have such a critical attitude like you in finding out what I want and what actually the fathers teach us. So to tell you the truth, after listening to you, I'm thinking of, well, besides learning, besides studying and then sharing and then inviting new members to our community, there is more than that. How much and how far should we do it? Meaning that we ourselves, I myself minimally, how much have I known? How much have I mastered what I'm going to share or what I'm going to ask or share to people so that they come and join in my community? Can you give some comment on that? Thank you.
Yes, and I will apply my critical attitude. One of the reasons I like Thomas Aquinas was because he was always making very careful distinctions. And I'm a software programmer. I write computer software, and that's what I do all day long. So yes, I have that very analytical mind. I do. But to answer your question, what we're here for as Dominicans is preaching for the salvation of souls. That's what it's all about. What we learned from Dominic is that the gospel does not change, but the ears to which we are speaking do. And so we have to listen. We have to listen, or we don't know who we're talking to. I am not a good listener. I'm a good talker. You wind me up and I keep talking. I need to do better at listening. I'm well aware of this. But we need to listen. I am very glad to hear that it is the Indonesian spirit to listen. Because you are in a country that is mostly not Christian, is mostly not Catholic. And you are where the growth is occurring in the church at this time. It's not happening in Europe. It's happening a little bit in the United States, maybe. It's not happening in the countries that were predominantly Catholic. It's happening in Africa. It's happening in the Middle East. It's happening in Asia. It's happening in Indonesia. You people are out on what we call the sharp end, the pointy end, the places where it's dangerous and where the gospel really desperately needs to be preached. It's a very different problem than we have. What I will say is, while yes, you do need to attract people to your own communities, your own Dominican communities, if you are only looking for people you can attract into your Dominican communities, you're missing most of the people you need to be preaching to. Because most Catholics are not called to one of the orders, to any of the orders. They're called to live out in the world and live their faith out in the world, and they need to hear the preaching. It's hard to do. It's hard to do here in the United States. We have so many people here who are post-Christian, is the word that we use. They come from families that once upon a time were Christian in name, at least. You know, they grew up at least going to church, and then they decided it wasn't important to them anymore, and their children were not really raised in the church. And now many people of my children's age are growing up without any knowledge of the faith at all. They have no idea what Christianity is about, even a little bit. That's actually a good thing, because they're also more willing to listen. They're more willing, it's not something they rejected the way their parents did or their grandparents did. It's something that is just unknown to them and not important to them, but that if we can show them the goodness and the beauty and the truth of it, they could be attracted to. And that's in some ways very similar to what you're dealing with where you are. You have people who can be attracted to the goodness and truth and beauty of Jesus. I am told that across the world, there are many Muslim background believers in Christ who they keep their heads down, because if they let it be known that they've converted to Christianity in many Muslim countries, they could be harmed for it. I don't know if that's how it is in Indonesia or not. But I am delighted to see that there are this many Dominicans in Indonesia, because the need is great. Here I am, I'm preaching to the preachers.
Trying to answer what you mentioned just now about when people try to go to Christianity, they will get some punishment or whatever. The condition minimally in the place where I was born, it was back at the border of Leste, Timor-Leste. Now what's going on is most of them with the background of Catholic, they were attracted by Muslims by giving them money and food, and then gather them together, and then preach Muslim to them. That is what is happening in my place. It is still going on, and some nuns and priests, they are also they give much attention on it. That is for your information, what is going on in our country. But when they are hurt or not, it's only a small part. It happens in Java and the western side, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But now things are much better. No more, incidents like that. Praise the Lord.
All right. Any other questions? Perhaps Padanang, do you have any questions?
Yes. Hello, Will.
Hello.
After listening to you, I have a short reflection because you told us that you enter another Christian denomination, and then you challenge us what is really country Indonesia. When I try to look for it, I remember my wife, because my wife is not really active Catholic devotee. So she was baptized and that's all. But she is not really into devotion and ethics. And then suddenly, when we had our first daughter, our first child, she started to look for the community, a good Catholic community, because she did not want to have a child which is very, you cannot guide. If we as a parent cannot guide our child to a good person. That's why she was looking for a community where she can learn how to teach. How can she teach or she guide our children into the good one? So she also explore another communities, Christian, Protestant, and also so sometimes she apply from, if you know, Miller books from the Miller, with the Miller family, something like that. And then she tried to apply that. I think maybe that can be an opportunity for us if the Dominikan Awam, Dominikan laity wants to attract more people. I think we can make a very welcoming community for the newly family. It's like in our age, 30s, 40s, because actually in numbers, we have a lot of Catholics, but they are very adamant. They just sleep, waiting to be disturbed. Because we are a second class in the country, so we are only minority. So the weapon to fight this minority is to be follower. So we don't want to make many movements. We just follow.
Yeah, I get that.
To create problem like 1998, something like that, So everybody, we have that kind of mentality. We want to be safe. That's why we stay inactive. But actually, as a Dominican laity, as a preacher, I think that will be our vocation here in Indonesia, to create a very welcoming community, right? I think so. That's a short reflection after listening.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's what we need to be doing here. It's something that we Catholics here in the United States are not always good at, is welcoming people in. It's very hard in an area like Los Angeles to go out and meet people, for the people of the parish to go out and meet people who are not members of the parish and invite them in. It tends to be seen as an invasion if you try to do that. I've come to believe that here, at least, it needs to be person to person. Each of us needs to be Christ to those we normally come in contact with, to the extent we can, which is easier said than done, as we say here. But that's what we need to do, is be Christ to those around us so that they see how we're living and they know who we are. And we have to be willing to explain it. There's a quote, it's attributed to St. Francis. He didn't actually say it. That we should always preach the gospel, and when necessary, we should use words. But we should preach with our actions. I have always looked at that and said, we should use words. We need to have the actions, but if we don't use the words, they won't know why we live the way we do. So we need to have both. But it's about individuals meeting and bringing God's love to individuals very often. Is, I think, what it takes, at least here. Whether that's the same in Indonesia, I don't know. But here in the US, if we really want to save souls, that's the way we need to go about it. One-on-one.
All right. Okay, any other questions? So, Padadang, do you have any other questions, or is the answering satisfying you, or?
Of course, yeah. It's really not easy task, no, will know. For example, like my friend in Middle East, I mean, they are in the Muslim country also, but they are creating community. They are Filipino. You know, Filipino is very strong in the community. So they create a small group of little Catholic Filipino there, and always celebrating Mass. And finally, they can have a church in United Emirates of Arab, right? I think that's maybe a very good example. When we also can learn, I think in the US, I think the problem, I don't know because I'm not the American, you have issue with the people starting to get tired of the church and they're leaving or not, I don't know. But in Indonesia, I think, I don't know. So in Indonesia, what is the problem? Is it because we have the mentality of the kingdom, so we are waiting for the authorities to say, okay, everybody spread like that, because we have a kingdom like in Java, we have kingdom. So if the king do not say anything, so we will not move. So if the bishop or the one in authority will not tell us to do something, so everybody will just stay dormant. I don't know, maybe it's one of the mentality or what. It's still our homework to do it. Yeah, but thank you, Will, for your.
Yeah, I know in the Middle East, there are ancient communities of Christians who have been surviving there on sufferance for centuries, for 1,000 years, with, living among the Muslim majority. And the only way they survive is by not calling attention to themselves. And that's not how you spread the gospel. But on the other hand, it's how you don't get killed. So I can't judge them for that. It's very hard when you're the minority. What I worry about here in the US is that the majority is getting more and more anti-Christian. And people here talk about that a lot. We are not nearly in the same degree of danger that people in other countries are. I know there are martyrs being created all over the world every day. And, you know, here in the US, we start crying if we stub our toe, you know, bang, well, okay, yeah, that hurt, but nobody's killing us. But I can see it on the horizon, possibly. I still have hopes that we'll turn it around here. Francis, I would like to say,
Yeah.
we've only got so much time tonight, but if any of you have questions that occur to you that you would like to send me, send them to Francis and he can send them to me and I'll write some answers and send them back.
All right, sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 7 more minutes before closing. Yeah, are there any other questions to Will? Perhaps by Chris or Pateo or any others by Willem, perhaps by Franz. Before we closing, Marlene, with Florencia, perhaps. Do you have more questions to Will?
Enough. Thank you very much. Thank you, Will.
Okay.
You know, I hope it's been helpful to you. We have a saying here, an expert is an idiot from out of town. And so I just want you to keep that in mind as you hear what I'm saying. I'm from out of town, and that doesn't mean that I have any more expertise than I actually do. But I hope it was helpful for you.
But Will, I have your sentence. Keep in my mind. Gospel doesn't change. Ears change. Thank you.
Yeah, and they do. That was Dominic's genius. He gave us a rule that we could change as conditions change so that we can continue to preach. You know, the Franciscans are still all about poverty. Poverty is their thing. Dominic adopted poverty so he could reach the folks in Provence, in France, could reach the heretics there. We need to do what we need to do to reach the people in front of us without going against the faith, you know, without sinning, without watering down the gospel, as we would say. We need to present the gospel truly, but we need to present it to the people who hear us. That's Dominic's real message to us.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm preaching to the converted, as we say, preaching to the preachers. You all know that.
We appreciate your opinion, your advice to us, and your experience in the United States. I think we are very much listening to experience, and hopefully whatever you are saying to us is very useful to all of us. I know it doesn't cover much, all of it, but I think we captured the point of what you're talking. Yeah.
I will ask you to pray for us here in the United States. The great danger for us is that we are going to be neither hot nor cold, but lukewarm. We live in a society that tries to lull us to sleep. It wants us to just be good consumers, buy the things that are advertised to us and not make waves. And we need to be hot. We need to be on fire. We need to be what we should be, as St. Catherine told us. And we need help. So if you could pray for us, that we would be what we should be, I will pray for you folks that you will be what you should be.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, of course, we will pray for you. Yeah, and we pray for anybody in Los Angeles or surrounds Los Angeles, of course. And we appreciate your time, Will. I know it's already nighttime in Los Angeles. And thank you again for your time availability and for your sharing to us. And we are from Indonesia. Would like to give our regards to your brothers and sisters who are not joining.
We are having our meeting tomorrow morning.
Okay.
We're going to have it on Zoom rather than in person this month because of the pandemic numbers are skyrocketing here right now. So we're being prudent, but I will give them your greeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Yeah. Thank you.
God bless all of you.
Okay. God bless, Will. Thank you, everybody. Terima kasih semuanya sudah ikut serta dalam Zoom meeting. Terima kasih juga partisipasinya, pertanyaan maupun komentar-komentar terhadap Will. Thank you, Will, again.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and hope to see you again next time in Los Angeles or somewhere else. Yeah, perhaps we can do the same Zoom meeting like this in the other time. Yeah. Maybe if there's a question, I will write to you by email, and hopefully we keep staying in touch.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Have a good evening, Will.
Thank you, Will.
Ya, selamat pagi semuanya.
Terima kasih
sudah join. Ya, bye.
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 So long.
Okay, God bless, Bill.
God bless.
Yeah.
We will.